Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beef Up Front College Football Show. This is your host, Ryan Coyle, joined alongside Joe Kmetz for another preview. I got a taste of some conference play past couple weeks, but this week we're really starting to rev up. We got games on Friday night in the Big Ten, Saturday in the Big Ten, USC and Michigan. That's weird to say as a Big Ten game. ACC clash, a Big 12 clash, and then an SEC clash as well to end our night, Joe. But it was fun last weekend. Got to watch some college ball together for the first time in, geez, what over a year, maybe 9 months, 10 months or something. But yeah, sat on the bar stool at 4 till about 10:30 at night and watched ball. And I think we learned about a lot about some teams that we had some questions about. Georgia looks human. Oregon kind of figured it out. Tennessee looks like they could be the real deal, even if it was against Kent State. But another week in the books, and here we are already in week 4, Joe. But as always, welcome back, and how are we?
Yeah, Beef, I'm fantastic. You said it best. I mean, we sat in that bar. They literally had to take our seats away because the bar started getting crowded for the night, like the people that were going out and not, watching
ball. About football.
Yeah, they didn't give a shit about Georgia, Kentucky. You know what I mean? I watched more of Miami than I thought I was going to this weekend. Shout out Jack, the random guy we made friends with. We watched the full Ball State Miami game, which was a terrible game. There was one point it was that game and the Tennessee Kent State game on 2 of the 4 main TVs at the bar. And people were probably, the people that cared about sports, probably like, why the fuck are these games on? But we definitely learned a lot about teams. Colorado State, Oregon State, pathetic showings in rivalry games. Backyard Brawl was great. Apple Cup was great, even though it was only on Peacock to stream, which was really annoying. But a lot of good games last weekend. This weekend a little bit different. You have some elite games, but outside of the games we're going to talk about, there's really not too many oh my god, must see games. Whereas last week you had a lot of good quality games, which is fine. I love all college football, and these games are going to be awesome. But it is kind of a little bit different to where the noon slate, there's not really a whole lot. Marshall at Ohio State is the big noon kickoff on Fox. Which
really?
I'll get into it now. I was going to get into it later. The fact that Fox did not put Utah Oklahoma State as the noon game and chose instead to have it compete with the USC Michigan game at the same time is the dumbest thing in the world. Should have had them separate. Should have spread out the day a little bit better. But this week, very top heavy with its games. But I mean, still great games nonetheless, and we're going to get into them.
All right, to wrap up week 3 first, records. Pretty average week from the boys. I went 10-10 overall, 4-2 straight up, 3-3 against the spread, 3-3 total, 0-1 on my lock of the week, which is Ole Miss over 44.5 team total points. They had 40 against Wake Forest. I think they took their foot off the gas, and I was 0-1 on my dog of the week, which was the Florida Gators. And I'll say this right now, I'm going to pick a side in that Florida versus Florida State game at the end of the season, but I will not put money on Florida State or Florida the rest of the year. I think if you do that, you're a sucker, no matter what the spread is, what the line is. You can bet against them for sure. You're a sucker if you do it, Joe, and take Florida
State. I was texting earlier. We don't have to get too much on track of this. That Florida State minus 2.5 against Cal is looking. I'm not going to do it. I might do it after I have a couple drinks, but I don't know, dude. I'm looking at that line. I'm like, they are this bad, by the way. We learned this. I've seen them play 3 times. They are one of the worst, I don't know, you want to say upper echelon teams, as a program I've ever seen, because they are terrible. They might not win more than 2-3 games this year, which is something to say. But I'm seeing them minus 2.5 against Cal, and I love the line. I'm not going to take it, but I love the line. I just want to say that.
I was looking at DJU stats today. 666 passing yards on the season. He is the devil that killed Florida State football at the end of the day. But yeah, to finish my point, you can bet against them. You can bet the game that they're playing in, but I am not betting on Florida or Florida State until the last game of the season. And I probably, once we get there and they play each other, it'll probably be a coin flip, and I'll decide who I want to cheer for, because I do think there's a legit chance both those teams are going into that game with 1 win. And it's funny to say that, but I think that could be a realistic scenario. that we get to, but that is a long way down the line. I don't want to talk about the end of the season at all. We have a lot of great football to get into this week. As always, our 5 biggest games of the week, and then our group of 5 game of the week. This one a little bit off the radar. Definitely don't think we'll be talking about these two teams the rest of the year, but we got ranked on Friday. We got a ranked game on Saturday at 3:30. We have also the 4 o'clock ranked versus ranked game. And then the 7:30 ranked game. So a lot of big games this week and another chance to get some data points on these teams and learn a little bit more. But we started off on Friday night in the Big Ten. I love back-to-back weeks now. We've had really good Friday night games. I haven't looked at the schedule each and every week the rest of the season, but I hope it's like that because it's awesome to have one or two kind of standalone games there on the Friday night slate. But number 24, Illinois, comes into the top 25 for the first time this year. They'll travel to Lincoln to play number 22, Nebraska. 8 o'clock kick on Fox. Nebraska's an 8-point favorite. Over under at 43.5. Joe, this game just on paper has the feeling of an old school Big Ten game. What do you make of this matchup?
Yeah, Coyle, I agree. I think this is definitely going to be a low-scoring game. I like Nebraska to win, but I like Illinois to cover just because although, I don't know how good either one of these teams are because, Illinois has the win over Kansas, but Kansas, you're losing to UNLV. You don't really know how good the Jayhawks are. They've been really disappointing. You can make an argument Kansas one of the most disappointing teams so far this season, outside of Florida State, of course. But and Nebraska, it's kind of the same thing. They have the win over Colorado, which is great. But besides being a decent offense, who knows how good Colorado is really going to end up at the end of the year. I really like Dylan Raiola. I think he's really coming along so far through 3 games. But I just think Illinois is going to muck this game up and keep it close. So I love the under here. I'll take Illinois to cover. I don't know if I'll actually bet it on Friday, but, I will definitely pick the Illini plus the 8 points. Really low scoring game. Feel like you're going to kind of wouldn't shock me to see Illinois up in the fourth quarter and Nebraska needing, kind of a clutch, maybe not game winning, but, 9 minutes left in the game. Raiola leads them down for a touchdown and they kind of hold out there. So give me Nebraska to win, but Illinois to cover.
Yeah, I think we said it at the beginning, but old school Big Ten game. I think on paper that's what it's screaming. Both teams off to real good starts on the defensive side of the ball, Joe, with Nebraska and Illinois through 3 games. Illinois has only allowed 26 points, and Nebraska's only allowed 20 points thus far. I think it could be a first 1 to 20 potentially wins type of matchup, but that is why we're seeing such a low total here, 43.5. After Kansas lost to UNLV Friday, I think that diminishes that Illinois win a little more. But you can look at Nebraska and say, wins over UTEP, Colorado, and Northern Iowa aren't exactly that impressive either. So I think both these teams, I mean, that game against Colorado, you can consider a test. It was only a 7.5 point spread. Illinois was a 5.5 point dog, so you can consider that a test. But real legit matchup between two teams that, if all goes well, are going to be contending for 9-10 win seasons, I think, at the end of the day. But just watch the Huskers play. That they passed the eye test to me. Dating back to last year, Joe, Nebraska has held their opponent to 17 or less points in 8 of their last 10 games. So this is a team that's been on a roll defensively. This is a really cohesive defensive unit. And we know what Dylan can do at quarterback, and the offense has only turned it over twice in the first 3 games. That was their big kind of bugaboo last year. So legit squad, I think, Joe, in every way, shape, and form. Insane home field atmosphere. I think it's going to be one of the better home field advantages in the country over these next few seasons. I'm going to give them the win here and the cover in a low-scoring game. I'm going to go 23-10 Nebraska. So Nebraska -8 and under 43.5. All right, Friday night for our group of 5 game, San Jose State travels to Wazoo coming off the big Apple Cup victory over Washington. 10 p.m. game on the CW network. I don't know how many people have that, but San Jose State +12, over under is 55.5, Joe. And Joe, I know how you love to lay out the path to the undefeated season, but I'm not sure if you have seen Wazoo's schedule, but there's certainly a path there. And if they do run the table, I kind of want your opinion on it. Is there a chance that they get in as maybe that 11th team after an undefeated season?
I mean, I say, yeah, there's a chance. The one thing that would kill them is they don't play 13 games. They only play the 12 games. that 13th game kind of would go far in terms of getting them, an extra win for their resume. I just don't see why at this point the committee wouldn't be like, oh, well, the Pac-12 has two teams in it. Yeah, they're conference champs, and put them in over a potential G5. But I would love to
Here's
see
the,
the
here's the
potentially.
schedule.
Yeah,
They have San Jose State this week. They go to Boise and to Fresno. Two back-to-back tough games. Then they host Hawaii, at San Diego State versus Utah State, at New Mexico, at Oregon State versus Wyoming. I think there's a path where probably dogs at Boise, maybe a pick 'em against Fresno State. The rest of the way, though, Joe, I think that they're favored in the rest of those matchups.
yeah, Coyle. I definitely agree. I mean, their schedule is very workable. They got through, Washington, which was, if you even look now, them and Boise are probably their biggest tests. They beat Texas Tech pretty soundly, who, I mean, could have put up 1,000 the way they were playing against, Nardone's Mean Green last weekend. But I like Wazoo in this game. I'll kind of shift gears the game. There's definitely a path for them to potentially make it to the playoff, but they need to be perfect, and they would need, multiple 3-loss teams within that top 10. Because then you can make the argument, well, hey, is a team with 3 losses really better than us? You can make that case if you're Wazoo and, a Wazoo fan. But I'm going to go with the Cougars here, 31-21 against San Jose State. I'll take San Jose State to cover the 12 points. I think it's a little bit too much. Just, when you're coming off of a win like that against your arch rival who left you in the dust, and you're, kind of forced to pick up the pieces and, what do we do now? And you beat them in a game that everyone thought were going to win. I know they're only 5.5-point favorites last week, I believe, maybe 6.5, but a game that most, the country, if you asked who, you thought was going to win, majority of people would have said the Washington Huskies. So shout out to the Cougars. They've been off to a great start. John Mater, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, having a great start to the season. I really hope that Wazoo can hold on to him because he will be really fun to see if he stays there long term. And, if he can build Washington State up, and stay there and develop as a quarterback. But I just don't think San Jose State is really that great of a football team. Going on the road here is tough as well. Friday night game, prime time, it's 7:00 out there. That'll be a really, exciting crowd. But when your toughest game of the season is at Air Force so far for San Jose State, they've played Sacramento State, FCS school, Kennesaw State in their first year as an FBS program, and they won at Air Force, who only beat Merrimack like 21-7. So I don't really think San Jose State's that great of a team, but I think, maybe the play might be first half spread, maybe money line for San Jose State. I feel like Washington State coming off of that big win might start out a little sluggish. Coyle, I'm reading through your analysis now. Okay, good. I didn't steal that if that was a play of yours. But give me Wazoo to win here. I'll still pick San Jose State to cover because I feel like 12 might be a little bit too much.
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to Matir, the quarterback for Wazoo. You were kind of touching on it. He's been awesome on the ground, 16 times for 62 yards and 2 TDs last week. And the week before, 197 yards on the ground against Texas Tech. Just a fun kind of college quarterback and a really good runner. But one reason why I think I'll keep my analysis, my handicap in this one pretty simple, that I think San Jose State is going to give Washington State a fight in this one and cover is their coach. I'm not going to attempt to say his name, but it's Ken, whatever his last name is, the Hawaiian coach.
Lolo?
There you go. Yeah, the former Navy coach. And he shut down Air Force in the triple option a few weeks ago. As we know, at Navy used to run it, used to practice against it every day, used to play against it against Army, all the others in the service academies and whatnot. He's had experience stopping running quarterbacks and strong rushing attacks before. So I'm sure he's going to have something schemed up to help slow down the Wazoo rushing attack and the quarterback especially. Wazoo coming off a very emotional victory as well. I think still at the end of the day, their talent's going to be a little bit too much. I'll give them the outright win. But I do think it comes down to the wire, and I think we get the cover there by San Jose State. So I'm going to go Wazoo 23, Wazoo 27, San Jose State 23. So San Jose State plus 12 in the under a 55.5 hit in there. I think that kind of background and experience against rushing quarterbacks is a big factor in this game. So give me San Jose State to cover. I really like that play there on Friday night. All right, we go to Saturday now where we got 4 games to break down, Joe. Weird to say this for the first time, but Big Ten, number 11, USC, at number 18, Michigan, 3:30 kickoff on CBS. USC a 5.5-point favorite on the road here, over under 46.5. And Joe, I think this offseason, this was a line that was completely flipped. I think Michigan was 5.5 or 6-point favorites in this one. I'm surprised to see it flip this much this early in the year. But you think USC can go into the big house and do what Texas did and take away this win?
I do not. I think Michigan wins this game outright. I'm going 24-20, taking the Wolverines. Michigan's passing offense sucked to begin with. I think Orji coming back is going to make it even worse. But I think that was kind of Michigan's plan going into the season. I think Sharon Moore kind of knew the passing attack wasn't going to be great. I think Michigan's going to really rely on the defense. I think defensively Michigan is better than LSU. I think USC going into this is a true road game. Miller Moss, first time playing in an environment like Michigan. I wouldn't be surprised if, first couple drives, maybe, USC gets a couple field goals or, they go 3 and out or they don't, score. I wonder if, Miller Moss might get a little bit uncomfortable back there. I am going with Michigan to win this game. Just a game where you're going to kind of be sitting there at the end, like, how the hell did they win this? I think that's like, there's no analysis. Everything screams USC is the better team. Take USC. I'm just kind of going off of the college football is such a beautiful, stupid sport where this will be the game. Like, it wouldn't shock me if USC outgained Michigan by like 150, 200 yards, but you see Michigan, just made a pick late that set up a short drive to win the game or something like that. So give me Michigan. I could look like an idiot, which I normally do, but I think Michigan wins this game outright.
Yeah, Joe, this was a game in the offseason where I looked at as one of the games where it would be a massive welcome to the Big Ten moment for USC. I know I said that week one and they were playing LSU and SEC school, but, kind of fits the same description of this is the transition that you're going to need to make, boys, and it's going to be you need to get better up front at the line of scrimmage. And I thought LSU was going to push them around, and USC held their own, and it's a game where I thought Michigan was going to do that too. I thought they would, in this game all offseason, they would go into Ann Arbor and get pushed around at the line, and Michigan just kind of handles them from start to finish. And a few weeks into the season, I'm starting to think the opposite. I know USC's only played 2 games, and I've said this a few times, but that shutout against Utah State, the 48-0 game, I don't care if it's JV football, middle school football, the NFL, or FBS football. Anytime you hold an opposing team to 0 points, that's an impressive feat. And USC, if you said that they would have done that last year against anyone, you would have looked at them like they had 3 heads. The talent on the defense has been there under Lincoln, I think, but the coaching hasn't, and just kind of the willingness and effort. This team plays hard now on the defensive side of the ball. We saw guys have willingness to tackle against LSU, and that's saying something with all the playmakers that they have on that roster. So I think this USC defense is definitely looking a little different, but I do think at the same time it's a game where Michigan kind of dares them to, all right, you want to play beef up front versus beef up front. We'll challenge you in this one, but I do think USC might be suited for it. I think USC also has the passing attack to kind of open it up and make a few explosive plays. But I do think Michigan does everything in their power to be like, all right, if you're going to beat us, it's going to be 10-7. And it's going to be, we have 60 runs and we're going to make you work for every single yard down the field. You're not getting any explosive plays on us. I think Michigan's just going to run. I really like the under in this game, especially with Orji in there now at quarterback. I don't know if they'll throw the ball 10 times, Joe, but eventually they're going to have to step up and make some throws. And I think that's where USC kind of exposes them a little bit at the end of the day. And I think Miller Moss is a much better quarterback than we've seen from Alex Orji so far. So at one point, the explosive plays are going to matter. And I think that's why USC pulls away. But I do think Michigan gives them a fight. I think it's a tough one in the first half, but USC pulls away in the end, wins 28-13. I'll go USC minus 5.5 in the under of 46.5 hitting there. The under, my favorite play in this game. We go to 3:30 now to the ACC. Georgia Tech at number 19, Louisville, 3:30 on ESPN2. Louisville, a 10-point home favorite here, over under 57.5. Another team that's only played 2 games thus far. Georgia Tech, Joe, going for their 5th game of the season already. Pretty wild there. But what are your expectations for this one? You think Louisville is legit with that number next to their name?
I think they're going to win the game. I just don't know if that number's legit. I just think this is kind of a tough spot for Georgia Tech going on the road. A lot of the podcasts, that I listen to, a lot of the things that I'll read about when I'm at work and I don't want to do anything. Like, there are a lot of people that are very high on this Louisville team. I haven't watched a second, so I really can't say how I feel about them. I think they're going to win this game at home. Georgia Tech Coyle is in the spot I was in last year when Notre Dame played in week 0. You're like, it's mid-September and their season's almost halfway done. Like they're gonna, they have the bye week next week, but they're 5 games in and on September 21st. It's crazy. Just how quickly if you start week 0, your season goes by. But this is a tough spot going on the road. They've already had to go to Ireland and to upstate New York, and now you're going on the road again. I just feel like there's been a lot of travel so far early in the year. Really nothing on the field that I'm going to analyze about this game. I am just going Louisville. This feels like a tough spot for Georgia Tech. I'll go 35-27 because kind of like I was saying, Louisville hasn't played anybody yet, and they're a 10-point favorite at home. I feel like it's a little bit too much, so I'll take Georgia Tech to cover. I'll take the over. I really don't have any kind of read on this game.
I think this is an upset alert game, Joe. I really do. I'm with you where I don't know what to make of this Louisville team yet. The Cardinals are 2-0, but wins over Austin Peay and over Jacksonville State, who I watched that game against Coastal Carolina during week 1.
Oh,
that was an ugly one, and I think
we all rode. I remember that was tough.
Yeah, we all took, and I think I have Jacksonville State was my CUSA team of the year for my future. So that one's not looking great either. I think over 7.5 wins, but I think the real kind of appealing and attractive thing about this Georgia Tech team is that they have an identity and they can be a tough team to handle at the line of scrimmage. It might not be saying much for what they did against Florida State anymore, but still, Florida State has a couple guys that are legit NFL draft prospects, at least still as of this moment early in the season. And Georgia Tech manhandled them up front. The Yellow Jackets can really run the ball. They run it for 193 yards per game on 5.6 yards per carry per game through these first 4 games. And Haynes King, he's a dual threat guy, and he's taken really good care of the football this year. After turnovers being a major problem in the past, he only has 1 interception so far this season. First real test for the Cardinals. I think it might catch them off guard a little bit. This is a tough Georgia Tech team. This isn't Jacksonville State or this isn't Austin Peay. Coming off the bye, it could be a little bit rusty. It was kind of like 2 preseason games basically for him and then a whole week off. Now you get a real team up front at the line of scrimmage that you probably haven't seen anything like besides in your own kind of practices. So I think it's a bit of a culture shock type moment, and I think we're due to see some chaos. I think we see it every week where a double-digit dog kind of wins. This kind of reminds me of a couple weeks ago when Cal beat Auburn at Auburn. It reminds me kind of that spot. Real feisty Yellow Jackets team. I'm going to give some chaos here and have Georgia Tech win this one outright on the road, 27-24. So give me Georgia Tech plus 10 and the under of 57.5 hitting there. All right, we get into the Big 12 now. Number 12, Utah at number 14, Oklahoma State. 4 o'clock kick on Fox. Utah, 2.5-point favorite. Over under is set at 51.5. We have RJ checking in the chat all over the Oklahoma State Cowboys. This is a big one for my future. I have the 4-team division parlay of Ole Miss, Miami, Oklahoma State, and Oregon, I believe it is. That's bad that I don't remember it, but either Oregon or Ohio State out of the Big Ten. Big one for me for that regard, but also I have Oklahoma State plus 650 to make the playoffs. So a pretty defining game for Oklahoma State's season and my bet potentially. What do you think of this matchup, Joe?
Yeah, Coyle, I'm on the Cowboys at plus 700. I got them to make the playoff. One of my 30-something futures that I fired off over the summer. I like Oklahoma State in this game, 38-35. This just screams a game Mike Gundy's an underdog. Just take Mike Gundy to win because he'll always pull something out of his ass. Really love the Cowboys in this game. Utah, first Big 12 game, right? They haven't played anyone yet in the Big 12. They played Utah. Yeah, this is their first Big 12 game, and you got to go to, after Texas and Oklahoma left, probably the most consistently good team in the Big 12 in Oklahoma State. Crowd's going to be crazy there. I think it's going to be an awesome atmosphere. Really wish this was the big noon game. I already said it. Would have been, a little bit nicer to not have to split between this game and the USC-Michigan game. Would have been a great game to start the day. I think this game is going to be a lot of points. This game just kind of screams the Big 12 chaos game. I think Oklahoma State's going to win. I think they're going to kind of be in the lead the whole time. Feels like Cam Rising and Utah are going to be playing catch-up. Ollie Gordon has not been great. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I'm not going to look them up right now because I'm kind of on a roll right now. Ollie Gordon has not been great. The offensive line hasn't been awesome. Alan Bowman has been throwing the ball a lot better than people were expecting him to, which is the reason why they've been winning games, which is kind of tip of the cap to Mike Gundy. Been coaching long enough now to where he can kind of tweak to what his team needs. He's not trying to be steadfast and give Ollie Gordon, 100 carries a game. But Ollie Gordon was supposed to be the best running back in the country. This was supposed to be the best offensive line in the country. They have not played like it. I am assuming they will step up in a big test. I think Cam Rising, he's been doing this 7 years like Alan Bowman. I think the stat was like they have the combined 48. That's
49.
The Bears Colts game this weekend. Like, that's just insane. But Cam Rising's just a guy, like, he's a great player, but he's so injury prone at this point. I don't even think it's crazy to say, like, he might get injured in this game. He already hurt his hand, missed, some time already. Coming back, because he didn't play against Utah State last week, right?
Nope, yeah. Zach Wilson's brother did.
I hate the Wilson family with a passion, but yeah, I don't know. You're coming off a week where you didn't play, like, you're a little rusty. Who the hell knows? But I like Oklahoma State in this game. Winner of this game, though, probably on the inside track to the Big 12 title game.
Yeah, it's a huge one. And Oklahoma State has Kansas State on the road next week. So I think this one is kind of if you're Oklahoma State, this is your season definer here. And my 4-leg parlay was Miami, Oklahoma State, Ohio State, and Ole Miss. $5 to win $4,000. I like the way it's starting out.
And this is is this to make the playoff or to win the conference?
To win the conference.
Okay.
But still have Oklahoma State plus 650 to make the playoff too. So it's still a big one in that regard. But since 2005, Joe, let me shoot it to you straight here about Oklahoma State. Since 2005, when Mike Gundy took over, he is 16-11-1 as a home underdog, covering at a 59% clip, and they're also 14-14 as a home underdog straight up. That's 9th best in the country and 4th best amongst power conference teams percentage-wise. So he's been great in these spots. Cam Rising, as you touched on, sounds like will play, but it is a finger issue on the throwing hand, which obviously isn't an ideal injury for a quarterback. Utah defense is in a really scary unit. My guy Mark was saying on the other show too, Cam Rising, 7-6 in games that he's either on the road or neutral. I think he's 13-0 at home, undefeated at home, but really has struggled on the road and at neutral sites. And the defense isn't that great this year for Utah. I think they're able to get exposed a little bit. They allowed 21 to Utah State team that just was shut out the week before by USC. Cowboys, though, do really need Ollie Gordon to start playing better to win big games like these. He's the key to this team's long-term success. Only averaging 3.4 yards per carry this season. It's imperative that he turns it around. Offense has still been dynamic, though, despite him not being able to play his best football. They put up 45, 39, and 44 points in their first 3 games. And as I said, I think Utah is a vulnerable defense, and I'm worried about Rising's hand. So still, give me the Pokes at this one at home, 31-24. So I'll go Oklahoma State plus 2.5 in the the over of 51.5 hit in there. Bad math by me. All right. We go to our final game of the week, Joe. We go to the first SEC game for the Oklahoma Sooners with number 6 Tennessee traveling down to Norman to play number 15 Oklahoma. 7:30 kick on ABC. Tennessee minus 7.5 over under 57.5. And I heard earlier this is the first time since 1998 that Oklahoma is more than a touchdown dog at home.
That's insane. I have a stat that might not be as insane, but it's still, pretty interesting. So since 2005, Tennessee has the second best point differential through 3 games. The only team better was 2013 Baylor. They were plus 186. Tennessee is plus 178. But Baylor played Wofford, Buffalo, and ULM. So pretty impressive stuff from Tennessee, with the NC State game being thrown in there. And that Baylor team that year went on to go 11-1. They won the Big 12, and they made it to the Fiesta Bowl, where they lost to Blake Bortles and UCF that year. But still, if that's any correlation, could be in for a real deep playoff run potentially for Tennessee this year. I'm going to go with Tennessee 31, Oklahoma 24. I think Oklahoma covers by the hook. This is kind of just, what I've been saying about some of these teams. You're going on the road. This is a huge spot. First ever home SEC game for Oklahoma. First SEC game ever, period. This is going to be a crazy crowd. It's the night game, on ABC. I think game day is going here, right?
I believe so.
Game day is going to this game. Everyone in the country is going to be watching this game because, like we were talking about, the other two biggest games of the day are at 3:30, going to be leading right into this one. This is the main event. I think the real play, though, and I was looking, Nico's already kind of gone up in the Heisman voting odds. He's plus 850 when I looked earlier today. If he has a good game, not even a great game, just a good game, like he throws for like 275, 2 TDs, Tennessee wins, I think his odds go up. He has a bunch of premier primetime home games coming up. He has Georgia on the road, I believe, as well. Will be there, Coyle, for the Kentucky game. I really think Nico Heisman could be worth a sprinkle this weekend. I'm pissed, can't in Connecticut. Coyle and I were talking about this because I said Ashton Jeanty was at the week 2 show. He was 100-1. Now he's down to 20-1. But I think Nico is definitely worth a sprinkle there for Heisman because if he has a good game this week, his odds are going to go up, and I think they're only going to go up the rest of the season. I think Tennessee's the better team at the end of the day. I just think this is like Oklahoma's going to be so juiced up. I mean, maybe Oklahoma like first half money line, and then Tennessee kind of pulling away in the second half. The Vols, Coyle, you and I watched them. I know it was Kent State, but still, I think Rocky Top about 80 times at that bar. That was nuts. I think Tennessee's a really good team, and they could be in, they say it feels like 98 because they won the national title that year. I'm not saying they're going to, but I'm saying they look a lot better than people thought, and people thought they were going to look good. So give me the Vols in this game. Did
you purchase that national title ticket during the game?
I have to look, Coyle. I don't know. There were a lot of beers and high noons going. I might have. I think I might have purchased that national title ticket.
I purchased that. I think me and Brace purchased it at 20-1. Went down to 16-1 by the end of the game, and now it's 14-1. And I do think if they roll in this game, probably goes to 10-1. So I do think if you believe that Tennessee is going to win this game, take a flyer on that national title ticket as well, because at their best, they can be just as good as any of these top teams: Texas, Oregon, Ohio State, Alabama. And the great thing is they get the chance to play most of these teams along the way, so you can really see kind of what they're made of. I think Nico is the player that has the most eyes on him out of any in the country this weekend. It's his first real national spotlight type of game. I know he had that NC State game. He had the bowl game against Iowa, but this is the first true road game that he's had. SEC, game day, you said it all. I did know Heupel was the quarterback at Oklahoma for when they won the national title, but I didn't know that he was the offensive coordinator and got fired by Stoops. I think that's a kind of interesting one. Kind of got done dirty there by his alma mater. But this is my Texas versus Michigan game from a couple of weeks ago. This is my welcome to the SEC Oklahoma dog walking of the week. I really think we are going to look back on this Oklahoma team in about 6 weeks and say, how the hell were they number 15 in the country in week 4? After this, the Sooners still have Texas, Ole Miss, Alabama, and Mizzou on the schedule. Murderers Row still coming up, and I think this is the first of many kind of double-digit losses for this Oklahoma team. I see a path where, even though they're sitting here at 3-0, where they finish with potentially 5 wins. They have Auburn next week. They have South Carolina, and they have Maine on the schedule. So if you just give them the Maine win, I could see them losing to either Auburn, depending on what they want to show up as. That game's on the road, or South Carolina. South Carolina is looking like a stingy team. That one's in Norman, so we'll see about that. But I just don't think that they're ready to compete at the line of scrimmage yet. I think Jackson Darnold's still a young quarterback and hasn't hit the ground running yet. He hasn't thrown for over 200 yards in either of these first 3 games. And I think they have a freight train coming in with Tennessee in this one, and Tennessee's got a lot to prove and a lot to play for. I took the Vols, as we said, at 20-1 to win the title during that Kent State beatdown. Now down to 14-1, and I do think that number is going to go down more after this beatdown. I think the major difference is at the line of scrimmage, and I think the coach as well. I think Josh Heupel over Brett Venables 10 times out of 10. So I think you got to get on the Vols train right now because it does not appear to be slowing down anytime soon, Joe. And I'll come out here and say this now. If they continue to beat up on teams at the way that they have, they beat Alabama, I think there's a good chance when we go down to Rocky Top that they are the number one team in the country when they play Kentucky.
I mean, that would be really awesome to see. That would be that. I mean, how the weekend. I think that we're also going to be the blackout game. By the way, I don't want to turn this into you and I talking about how we're going to Tennessee in like a month and a half, but I think Tennessee is legit. After this, I'm going to look on my phone and see if I did purchase that national title ticket for the Vols. But quick question though, before we move on to our dogs and our locks of the week. Do you think if you said 5 wins, which I do agree, this Oklahoma schedule is really really tough. Do you think Venables, if not fired, is like firmly on the hot seat?
Well, they gave him a 6-year extension before the season, and I was on Twitter saying that's stupid. Why would you do that as you transition into the SEC? And everyone was coming back at me saying, "Well, now he has security; he can continue to build the program as he wants." I'm like, "Well, if he needed the security and you were worried about that, like, then he might not be the coach for you at all. You're Oklahoma. Like, I feel like this is getting lost in the shuffle as well. It's Oklahoma. Like, I don't know how many times they made the playoff during the 14 playoff, but it was several. Like, that is, yeah, that should be the expectation. Like, other than Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, and Ohio State, I think Oklahoma is probably 5th in total appearances in the college football playoff. Like, that's a standard there. And for this to be a team that, even if they just say they win 6 games and go bowling, I still don't think that's good enough. And sure, maybe he has one more year, but giving him a 6-year extension before the season even started after last year, they ended well. I think they finished 10-3 or 9-4 it was. But the year before, they didn't even – I don't think they went bowling, or they went 6-7. So I think there's some serious concerns, especially on the lines of scrimmage. They have to get a lot better. And they're also banking on Arnold to be a star. I mean, he was a 5-star recruit. He's got to be better. But I have, to finish it up, Tennessee 35, Oklahoma 17. So Tennessee minus 7.5 and the under of 57.5 in there. All right, we get into our dog of the day and our lock of the week. Now, Joe, you want to start us off with your dog and let us know who is going to be barking on Saturday night?
Yeah, so my dogs have been pretty solid so far this year. Kind of the complete opposite for me from last year, where I couldn't hit a dog to save my life, and my locks are pretty decent. I'm going to go BYU plus 7.5. I like them outright in this game. They host Kansas State. That is the 10:15 game on ESPN. Kansas State, like, I don't know how many people want to go to Provo, Utah the week before one of your biggest home games of the season. This is just like the definition of like a look ahead trap spot, whatever you want to call it. Kansas State, could win the game. I kind of like BYU outright, but I think BYU plus 7.5 is a great bet for a dog this week. Love BYU. Feel like they're going to be barking. Wouldn't be shocked, some people waking up, that didn't stay up late and they see, 2 a.m. final. BYU stuns Kansas State, and everyone's like, well, what the hell's going on in the Big 12? Because I think the Big 12 is going to be, they're kind of talking about it, part of my take earlier too. It was always the chaos conference, but you still had Oklahoma and Texas to kind of keep things in check. Now without those two, this conference is wide open. I think BYU pulls off this upset against Kansas State, who will be looking ahead to next week against Oklahoma State.
Yeah, huge look-ahead spot and fall flat spot after last week's big win. I will go back to the Chris Kleiman, second-best coach against the spread in the country during his time at Kansas State. Not a always perfect data science point, but, yeah, that is a tricky spot. But the game, I think, means this Oklahoma State game against Utah means so much more to Oklahoma State because of that game next week, and especially if K-State loses that game, then really is, a de facto probably elimination game for both those teams, at least for an at-large spot, and maybe even as a team just to get into the playoff itself. But huge spot there. My dog, I didn't really love much on the board this week, so I'm not going to say this is a force, but a team that I think's spunky and has a little bit of fight in them, and I think could be undefeated right now if they didn't poop down their leg against Oklahoma State, and that's Arkansas. +3 at Auburn. One of the main things I took away from SEC Media Day was like how much opposing coaches were raving about how hard it is to play at Auburn. But Cal went there 2 weeks ago and won. Like, is it really that tough, or is it that tough when they have like an elite opponent and everyone's jacked up for the game and everyone's bought in on being there and excited about game day for Auburn? Arkansas coming to town this week. Is it a game where everyone's in their seat at kickoff? Is it one that everyone's still in the building by halftime or the end of the third quarter. Like it's not the biggest game of the year. So I do think Arkansas has shown a lot of fight, especially on the offensive side. Had a second half rally against our UAB Blazers last week, but Arkansas +3. I think they could go to Auburn and win that game outright. Not sold on the Auburn quarterback situation. And Taylor Green's a baller. He's a tough guy to prepare for. So give me the Razorbacks +3. I think they could win that game outright at Auburn. All right, time for our lock of the week, Joe. I'm going to go with one back to the well of fading this team against the spread in the first half. Last week did it with Tennessee -30.5 in the first half against Kent State. I think it was 37-0 at the end of the first quarter. This week I'm going to go with Penn State as Penn State hosts Kent State. They're -30.5 in the first half for Penn State. Coming off a bye, had a no-show first half against Bowling Green a couple weeks ago. I think James Franklin has made it a point of emphasis. Start out hot, get out and get up early. Let's get the backups in, give the other guys a chance to play this week. Penn State rolls Kent State. I know they sound very alike, but total game spread 49. But watching them last week, that was some rough football against Tennessee. So give me Penn State -30.5 in the first half as my lock of the week.
Yeah, Coyle, I mean, you and I said that was a real bad game. My lock of the week, I'm going with the Syracuse Orange.
It's your swap.
I'm going with Syracuse here. They hit earlier as my dog. They are playing Friday night, 7:30 ESPN. They host Stanford. Stanford going across the country on a Friday night to play this game. I said, the ACC. I think it's of all the realignment moves, the stupidest realignment move is Cal and Stanford going to the ACC. I don't think Stanford's that great of a football team. You know, they're 1-1 on the year. They played Cal Poly. Whoop-de-doo. They lost to TCU at home. And who knows how great TCU is. This is a really tough spot. I love Syracuse in this spot. Once again, I kind of said this when I was talking about the Georgia Tech game. When I picked Syracuse as my dog, the stress and the pressure that is off of Kyle McCord now that he's not at Ohio State, that he's in a place like Syracuse, so far through, and I know it's only been 2 games, but 735 passing yards, 8 TDs, 1 interceptions, 85.0 QBR, 8th best in the country. He's been very good so far. I think he continues that. He clearly has a coach and a staff and a team that loves him and rallies around him. I think that's big for his confidence. I think they go 3-0. I think Syracuse can have a very good season. Potential dark horse for the playoff. Not even just a, ACC appearance, potentially an at-large bid because, Coyle, I know I'm guilty of doing this all the time about, looking at the paths ahead. I'm not going to get into it, but Syracuse has a pretty nice path ahead. So give me Syracuse in this game -3.5. I think they win by 2 touchdowns or more. I think Stanford's just kind of this is going to be the first time where, if you're a Stanford fan, alum, not that there's many fans of Stanford, I feel but you're a player, coach on that team, you're why did we sign up? Why are we doing this? Flying to upstate New York on a Friday night. It's just brutal. And I read, too, they have to – because the following week, I believe they play at Clemson. But because Stanford, their semesters are different than the rest of the country, they're I think it's their finals or the start of the semester. So they have to fly back to California to fly back next week to South Carolina. So you're just probably dreading this as a player. So give me Syracuse -3.5. Really love Syracuse in this spot. I think the Orange are a very good football team.
Yeah, in 2 weeks, Joe, we have a potentially big ranked versus ranked matchup. I think we could be seeing Syracuse versus UNLV. I think that could be a ranked versus ranked in a couple weeks.
And Coyle, I was saying this, I was looking at this, but outside of Miami at the end of the season, you could make the argument that Syracuse's toughest game left is going to be at UNLV, which is saying something about the rest of the ACC. But Syracuse, I think, is a solid football team. And Coyle, you said it best. Their schedule not great. UNLV, that's another Friday night game. UNLV Syracuse, that's going to be really exciting. And we can get into that later. But if UNLV wins that game, all of a sudden they have 3 power conference wins on their schedule. So who the hell knows what's going on? What could happen there out in the Mountain West? But love Syracuse. And that's all I got.
I can't wait till there's a battle for Syracuse and Indiana for the last team in the college football playoff. But that'll do it for the Week 4 college football picks and preview show here from Beef Up Front and the Concordia Cobblers, as always, to finish out the show. Sorry it was upside down. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We will talk next week.